Hello and welcome to Blueprint Cymru, a podcast bringing ideas, experience and ambition to the conversation of building a better future for Wales. My name is Simon Hobson. In today's episode, I'm joined by Mair Rowlands. Mair was born and raised in Cardiff before moving to North Wales, where she studied at Bangor University. She lives in Bangor with her partner and a young child and is passionate about supporting families and strengthening communities. For over 10 years, Mair has worked in leadership roles in higher education, the voluntary sector, and local government. She is director of Bangor University Students' Union and previously worked in sustainability at the university. Her career reflects Mair's commitment to empowering young people, to promoting equality and the Welsh language. At only the age of 23 years, Mair was elected as a local councillor and has since gone on to serve as cabinet member for children, young people and leisure before becoming deputy leader of Cyngor Gwynedd. Mair is number 2 on the closed list for Plaid Cymru in the constituency of Bangor Conwy Môn, just behind her party leader, Rhun at Iorwerth. So it's great to have you on the podcast, Mair. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So perhaps you could tell the listener a little bit about how you came to be standing in the Senedd and where your childhood and anything that you feel you'd like to share with people.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you. Well, I grew up in Cardiff, but my roots are very much in North Wales. Both sets of Nang and Tides were from Conwy Môn, Conwy, Sbyty Ifan, and both my parents are from North Wales, Carnarvon and Denbigh, and they moved to Cardiff to look for work as teachers. So my mum was a French teacher throughout her career, and my dad was a geography teacher before then, working for the BBC and Environment Agency. And yeah, I went to Ysgol Glantaf, Welsh language, primary, secondary school. Cymraeg has always been a huge part of my identity. And then I came to Bangor University to study. I studied Welsh and theology, and I've been here ever since. Bangor is where I've built my life, where I'm raising my little boy. My partner is a lecturer in the university as well, and North Wales, Northwest is where I've chosen to live, work and raise a family. And I guess normally it's people from Northwest maybe who move to Cardiff like my parents did, not the other way around. But you know, I feel very privileged to have had that opportunity to stay here, to work here, and to live my life through the medium of Welsh as well. And you mentioned a bit of kind of my journey in political career. So it all started when I was elected as Llywydd Imcymer, the Welsh Language Students' Union president. That was my first real experience of actively being
What
involved.
sort of age were you then?
So I was, I must have been 21 then when I did that, student politics, I guess. And it was my first real experience of actively being involved in a political role and in politics. And I think that's opened every door that followed, really. Having that opportunity to represent people, how to speak up when something wasn't right, and that's eventually maybe brought me to where I am now and standing in this election.
So would you say that it was those experiences as a child and there at university in Bangor that have formed your worldview, was particularly obviously concerning politics?
Definitely, yeah. And I think, I've also, I guess I've been brought up in the family. We've always been involved in campaigning for Welsh language things, in terms of Welsh language education. I was in a pram when my parents were in protest campaigning for Welsh language education, and that's always been part of kind of my identity and that journey, and I guess why I went into student politics as well. But then that kind of upbringing has, shaped who I am and what my politics are, definitely.
And would you say to a listener that doesn't have fluency in Welsh, such as myself, has seeing the world through that particular language shaped how you interpret situations and the position that Cymru finds itself in?
Yeah, I guess that's a really interesting question. I guess it very much has impacted how I look at things. I think, it's this idea of in my political roles, I've also often felt I have to, that we have to fight, we have to protect the Welsh language, but also opening it up to everyone in Wales. The work I do in student unions, I work with students from across the world, and shaping their ideas of Wales and the Welsh language is really important, and how that then relates to politics day to day, I guess.
Well, I mean, personally, I think it's a pretty cool language to sell as something for people to learn anywhere in the world, given that it's one of the oldest languages in Europe. So so how was that sort of the process then you went through to then now you find yourself in a really good position on the list, number 2? There's a very strong possibility of getting elected into the Senedd. So how did you come to find that you wanted to put yourself forward?
Yeah, so I guess I have spent over a decade working in local government as a councillor, higher education and community leadership. I've seen both the strength of our communities, but also the frustration caused when decisions made in Cardiff or Westminster don't reflect what people have actually needs in our communities. Just my journey has influenced that kind of thinking, what the next step is. How can I make a difference? I think being a mum has also changed the way I see the world. So suddenly it's also about the future I want for my child, and that has made me feel like now is the time to kind of step up and help shape the Wales he'll grow up in as well. But I've always, I have stood for the Senedd before. Back in 2016, I stood at that time in the Vale of Clwyd, and that there's still the same ambition of wanting to see change and work with communities, but also at that time it was more about me having the experience and having that experience of campaigning and and everything. So but very much, I think it's been kind of a natural step, but also that experience and passion has hopefully helped that get that support to from members as well.
So is there something that from those different experiences and the time you spent now on council and being involved in party politics, is there something that you see is missing and that you feel like it's a calling for you, that you really have to step up and there isn't someone else that is going to voice this particular concern?
Yeah, well, I think I like a challenge, and I often feel like if I want to change it, let's do something about it. And I think, there are things certainly, in people's day-to-day lives. I think, when I was councillor, I dealt with a lot of things around housing and supporting families in with housing concerns and supporting families, that we're looking for suitable housing for them and the disabled child. All of those kinds of things have impacted kind of where I see, there could be a different way, or people are being let down, and we need to see change in Wales. But I also know and realise that those aren't easy fixes either, and it's how we look at politics and how we work with communities to come up with solutions as well. I think some of my passions naturally as well is around higher education. The current situation in terms of higher education is not sustainable, and I think I've felt some frustrations in terms of things haven't been looked at properly, or things haven't changed quickly enough, and I think once again, there are not easy fixes, but there are things that can be changed, and we should be looking at. I think it's also coming up with solutions. We don't have all the answers, but we have to come up with solutions with people, with communities, with people that work in different sectors. And I think there's lots of different motivations. And with this election, there is a real chance that Plaid Cymru will be leading in government, and I want to be part of that, and want to be part of looking at making those changes on the ground as well that affects people's lives.
And on a personal level, you've experienced politics. You know what it's about, and it can be quite bruising and personally draining. So emotionally, how do you keep yourself going? What is your driver to make you want to go out and knock on another door and things of that nature?
And it's surprising. It can be draining, but to me, I'm very much a people person, and it's people that do. It sounds simple, but that is what motivates me. So some of those examples I gave earlier in terms of when you've had challenges and you work with constituents and families, like it's actually when you see that you can make a difference to their lives, but also knowing that there's something better. And I just love having the conversations with people on the doorstep, that you can learn so much, and it's listening to the people. And you might get some negative conversations, but there's it's always those positive ones that you remember. And I think that kind of listening in politics is so important. And I love campaigning period, because you get to speak to so many different people from different areas, from different backgrounds, and it kind of it helps shape how you think about things as well. I think it's draining, and also it's kind of that sometimes you need to have a break and have that family time, and that's challenging. You're balancing a lot of different things at the moment, but I think it's remembering that they motivate me as well.
And when it comes to putting your name forward, and you said you stood before for the Senedd, so in itself it's not a new thing to do, but obviously it's under a new system, a new way of electing people. And I was wondering, is there something that people maybe misunderstand about you, do you think, as to what your motivation is, why you do it? Like, have your parents always been supportive of your politics?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive family, quite active, actively been involved in Plaid and politics. My dad has stood for election. He stood for Plaid in 1999 in Cardiff. He's stood in Anglesey in 2015. And So they completely get the whole campaigning thing. I've been very lucky, and my partner, we've met in a Plaid conference. So but so there is that element of I've got that support and understanding, and that's not the case for everyone. They don't, maybe their parents haven't had that experience before, and politics is completely new to them, maybe. So yeah, I'm lucky in that sense. But I do think, and I remember when I stood for a councillor first time, you had a lot of people like, oh, you're very young, oh, you're standing for election, but obviously I'm older now, and that's not so much the case. But I think sometimes probably people sometimes have that idea that you go into politics for your own benefits, or some could think I'm a career politician, because I've done different roles within politics, or but I think anyone who really knows me knows that that's the part, the point scoring or career politics. I can't stand that. I'm interested in the practical side, so getting things done, listening properly, trying to fix things. I guess most politics is problem solving, not kind of that point scoring thing. So yeah, but I think it's easy. You have conversations on the doorstep where people don't trust politicians, and they see everyone with the same view sometimes, where when they actually have a conversation with you, and I say, I'm a candidate, I'm standing, this is why I'm standing, this some of our priorities, I think they can generally sometimes then they'll be like, oh, okay, well, maybe you are here giving me your time to try and explain and it persuades me. So that helps bring the barrier down sometimes, I think.
And just a question that's popped into my head with you, because you've been knocking on doors for so many years, have you noticed a change in the way that people respond to opening the door and realizing there's a politician in front of them, or has that been quite consistent?
I think some of it's quite consistent. I think what's interesting, we've started, when you're right up to election, people tend to get like, oh my gosh, there's a lot, especially in local councils, they get lots of people knocking on their door. I don't know, in this election, it is a very different election. And from conversations I've had, it seems like we as party are the main ones out door knocking, but we've been doing that since last summer before Christmas, where people don't expect to see you that early. So I would say those conversations, people are really open to have longer conversations. They want to, say what their opinions are. But when you get closer to the time, then they're more likely to have made their mind up, or then they're not so interested in talking to you because they've had loads of leaflets and everything through the door. But no, I think relatively consistently, most people are quite open to talking to you and sharing their opinions. But naturally, you'll have some that don't want to share how they vote, and are not interested, or maybe they know they're not going to support that particular party, so they might not want to talk to you. But most people will be very open. But the current campaigning, it just shows that the political landscape in Wales is going to change in terms of how the conversations that we're having, definitely.
And what's your reading of people's understanding of the new system? Where do people fully comprehend that they'll be going in and looking at a list of parties as opposed to an individual candidate's name?
No, that you will have some that do understand that, but it's not widespread, I would say. The more recent conversations I've had, it seems like more people are starting to understand that than it was before Christmas. I think people see the new constituencies that they're huge. So how do you represent people in Anglesey and in Conwy and Bangor, and we explained that you've got the 6 members in that area that be elected. But I think it's difficult. It's kind of quite complicated to explain as well. And you'll often have conversations where they've never voted before, or they haven't voted for years, but they're considering it, and then understanding that the whole system's changed as well is it is another layer, isn't it, of complexity.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's making Wales part of what is relatively common in Europe, isn't it? That structure of electing and having multi-member constituencies.
And I think that's what's really interesting. It is common in across Europe, and first past the post system isn't the usual system in across a lot of European countries. So it's interesting, but when you explain that to them and how it is proportional representation, you'll have more representatives, then people start thinking, oh, okay, and their votes will count more in the, because of the new system. But you'll also get some that don't want more politicians as well. So it varies in terms of those conversations.
So if we assume you are elected, and at the end of the 4 years, how do you want those constituents that you speak to and represent? How do you want them to remember your time in your first term in the Senedd?
Yeah. Well, I think there's the element of how they see me as a politician. So hopefully constituents will see me as approachable, compassionate, genuinely on their side, someone who listens, who turns up and who works to try and make their lives better. And also, I guess you have to think about how do I measure and how constituents will measure whether my time as a Senedd member will have been a success. So it's also, being judged on the things that I've done, that I said that I would work on. I think I would hope to set out as clear priorities for me as an individual member, as well as what we would deliver as a party, and whether they're looking at whether there's visible progress in terms of our policies as a party, but also things in terms of what I've managed maybe on a local level. Have I helped move forward specific projects that matter to people, like, I don't know, things in Bangor, for example, like improving our high street, supporting local businesses, or helping bring investment into Bangor Conwy Môn, looking at things like that in terms of funding secured and partnerships created, and also casework will be a key part of any Senedd members' work. So how I've managed outcomes for individuals that's made a difference as well.
I suppose so. Just a thought jumped into my head. If you're a constituent in a multi-member constituency, you could effectively be having 6 people working on your problem.
Yeah, and I think that it's a very new system, and I think we're unsure about how exactly that's going to work. And will people contact all members? Will they contact members that maybe they know live in a certain area? Or will it be more that they contact members from a specific political party? So I think that is a bit of an unknown, and I think what I'd be looking for is we represent all constituencies, and even those that don't contact us as well. There are things that we can act on and can make a difference to. And I think I'd look back. I will hopefully look back and see that I push things forward in a tangible way, and feel that I've managed to make a difference and do the job properly.
If there's something you can think of that you hold a belief about Wales that you think most of your political opponents would disagree with, and I mean, if you're able to make it something that's not a party policy, that would be great. But obviously, more this whole podcast a bit more about learning who you are as a person, really. But obviously, if if who you are as a person is one of the reasons why you're in your party, then fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's a difficult one. I guess when you're thinking about this question, as in one belief that I hold about Wales that I think most of my political opponents would disagree with is the reason that I am part of Plaid Cymru, I guess. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of that kind of personal thing. But in terms of independence, I'll mention it. Well, I do believe personally that Wales should be an independent country. For me, that belief in an independent Wales comes from that simple place. I want decisions about our lives, our communities, and our future to be made here by people who live here and understand Cymru, and that kind of about fairness and giving Wales the tools to shape its own path. But I understand for this campaign, it's not the priority, and it's people's immediate needs come first. So childcare, the NHS, housing, it's about making people's lives better in real practical ways. And right now, that's where Plaid's focus is on independence for Plaid, and for me is a long-term ambition, something that the people of Wales will decide on. In terms of
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I was really interested into your thought process through your life, how you arrived at supporting independence for Cymru. Whether it's something you just sort of instantly felt like, yeah, in my gut, that's the right thing, or whether you'd been on a journey to it.
I think it's been part of my upbringing, and it has just been there from childhood. And I think, I think some of my, like, that whole identity and how Cymraeg comes into my whole identity, I think it is also linked to the idea of independence and this idea of fighting for our own language and and then fighting for our own future and fighting for, ensuring that we make the decisions about our own country. There is that element that it is something that, has been part of my beliefs from a very young age, and strengthened by seeing how, Wales has been governed and how Westminster governments don't really think or care about Wales, for my personal opinion. But it's a very different journey for different people, I think, in terms of that view of independence. And I would imagine probably moving to North Wales and, my surroundings and my involvement in politics locally here has also contributed to strengthening that as well. But I think it's a journey, and we need to bring the people of Wales on that journey, and ultimately it'll be the people's decision, and that's how it should be.
Well, that was one of my sort of follow-on questions to what you've said there, which is how does one bring in, if you think of South Wales, South East Wales, where maybe there isn't so much prevalence of speaking Welsh, certainly not to fluency. How does one bring that grouping of people that consider themselves Welsh but maybe aren't yet convinced of independence?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of what we as a party are trying to achieve now. I guess we've had more support in the Northwest, where there is that Welsh language, strong communities within those areas, and we have seen people looking at Plaid, the Caerphilly the by-election, for example, looking at actually seeing that we are the party, the grassroots party that can, want campaigning to change people's lives, and we are a party that have been here for 100 years, but we need to show people what we can do to improve Wales for them to come on that journey to maybe even consider that independence is an option. And many people, are afraid of that prospect because it's an unknown, and there's a lot more work that would need to be considered. But I think, showing that we are a party that represents people from across Wales, and I think this election will mean that we have members elected across all of Wales with the new system in place, and showing how making tangible changes to people's lives through policies, like some of the policies that we're putting forward, like the childcare offer, for example. Those are related to day-to-day people life. Independence might feel far away, but it shows that by making decisions with the interests of Wales and the people of Wales at the heart, that can make a real difference. That could potentially lead to more changes in future.
So what's as the political culture in Cymru evolves and the Senedd acquires more powers and I guess matures as an institution in people's day-to-day lives and mindset, what's the political culture that you'd quite like to see formed in Wales, and how distinct would you like that to be from other parts of the United Kingdom?
For me, it's about creating a political culture that is kinder and more compassionate, one where people treat each other with a bit more humanity at times, I think. And I think, well, to be honest, I think, Senedd have worked, I think seeing more collaboration, but there are examples where the Senedd have done that well, and I would say it's maybe recent times where we've seen that political culture starting to change in Wales, and what comes in May, things might change again, but I would be pushing for ensuring that we've got that kind of kinder, more compassionate politics, and that kind of collaboration. The new political voting system does mean that you will have to collaborate more, and I think more honesty about what we can and can't do, and a lot more listening. I think in listening to respond, not just to respond, but listening to people to understand what the realities of their lives are like, and how do we work with communities to change that. But I think Wales is a small and close knit, country that it's enough that we can actually do politics differently if we choose to. So I'm very excited if I do get elected to work with some of the candidates I know are standing for Plaid, and I think there will be candidates from different backgrounds and members from different backgrounds from different places across Wales that bring something to the Senedd, and I think it's going to be a lot more diverse, hopefully, as well.
Do you see that part of the new Senedd, do you envision that would be maybe a bit more, for want of a better term, combative with Westminster, and push back a bit more than has historically been the case over the last 26 years of its existence?
Well, definitely. I hope so. There's an opportunity for us to do so, and if we are, if Plaid are leading in government, we're not going to shy away from challenging Westminster. You know, we need to ensure that we're putting the people of Wales first and the benefits of Wales, and that means sometimes we have to go knocking on Westminster's door and have conversations to ensure that we're not shortchanged, and that you know, we are ensuring we're doing everything possible to get, you know, the best offer for the people of Wales. And with a Plaid government, that's definitely what we will do. And you know, I think Labour promised change after the Westminster election with a Labour government in Westminster, and we've not seen, you know, we've seen decisions made that impact the people of Wales, where the Labour government in Wales haven't stood up for us, I think.
So, as we're coming towards the end of the conversation, because I don't want to keep you too long, last couple of questions for you. If you, apart from obviously being a mum, if you weren't standing for election, what would you be doing?
Well, so I'm currently the director for Bangor University Students' Union, and you know, I'd still be where I am now at the moment, working with brilliant students and elected student officers every day. It's a job I love. It's full of energy and ideas, and students and student officers inspire me constantly, and they remind me why the future is worth fighting for. But I'd also want to, you know, want to look at encouraging more young women to step into leadership roles, and possibly doing that within my role of the Students' Union, but also something, you know, on a voluntary level. I think it's something I feel strongly about, because I know what it's meant for me to see other women leading when I was younger, and if I wasn't running for Senedd, I'd still be trying to open those doors for other people, and you know, being a mum, showing people that you can, you know, you can have a family, you can be a mum, you can represent people in your community, and be a Senedd member all at once.
And what has been your experience as a female in politics? Has it been largely positive, or have you found issues at all?
Well, I think you know, I've been lucky to have a lot of support in the different political roles that I've done, and I've had mentors, like informal mentors, if you get what I mean, like Cyngor Gwynedd, the current Arfon Senedd member, was a councillor when I started, and very much supported me and encouraged me to, you know, to consider cabinet positions and so on. So that I've been lucky in that sense, but it has been challenging. You know, I was at one time the only woman on Gwynedd Council cabinets, and you know, that has its challenges. And also, I pushed for, in my role as deputy leader, for a programme supporting women into leadership roles in the council as well, because you know, you often see maybe the roles on a higher level are also men, and it's ensuring that, you know, there's more women in the workplace as well as in politics, and it's challenging at times. I think women are judged to a different level, and you know, as a young woman going into politics as well, often people didn't expect that, you know, that they might have thought I was the administrator in the room and not the politician. That happens sometimes, but you know, I think I've been lucky, and I know of other women that have been councillors that have had more challenging times, you know, challenging experiences than I have, and some of that has also been around, you know, social media engagement and online abuse, where I wouldn't say I've had that much to this point, but I know, you know, that could change being an elected member as well, and it's just something that I am very aware of, but it's not going to put me off going into politics, because we need to change that and try and change the culture and how people view politicians.
Absolutely. Fully agree with you there. So in your wildest dreams, how would you like Wales to be in 15 years from now? What's your vision for Wales?
It's a big question, isn't it?
Well, yes, it can be as big or as small as you want as a question.
I think Wales where young people don't have to leave to get on in the world. Keep giving young people those opportunities to stay in Wales and shape the future of Wales, and careers in Wales where childcare is world class. It's something, as a mum of a young child and with many friends and people in the community, that depends on childcare and this offer that we will implement in a Plaid government. In 15 years' time, we'll see the difference that has made to people's early years for children, parents, opportunities in terms of employment, the economy, and so on. But I think also a Wales where Bangor Conwy Môn is thriving, obviously is that would be my constituency, but with good jobs, strong university, a vibrant Welsh-speaking communities, and that being across Wales, and genuinely affordable homes as well. I think a Wales that is confident, ambitious, and making more decisions for itself with maturity. So yeah, I think those are some of the things I'd like to see in Wales in 15 years' time, and hopefully I'll be able to contribute to shaping that as well.
I was about to say, were you to be elected, you've got a lot of work to do.
A lot.
So obviously you've started campaigning some months ago and you're into the thick of it now. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listener with regards to that, or any other events you're involved with?
Well, there's a lot of hustings happening. There's an event on Saturday in Colwyn Bay with Amnesty International, for example. That's a hustings event. Trying to think, we have an event in Porthaethwy in Menai Bridge on the 2nd of April, which is part of the Team's leadership tour as well. But mainly I will be on the doorstep knocking on people's doors, and that people might expect to get a knock from me or the campaign team. But no major events to promote at the moment. But hopefully those will be promoted through our campaign page shortly.
Mair Rowlands, diolch yn fawr for being today's guest on Blueprint Cymru. If you enjoyed this conversation, have comments or on today's topic, or would like to donate to keep the work of New Wales going, please head over to our website, which is new.wales. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.